Hi, CK. It's Darren Caniff, Mayor of Chatham-Kent.
And Brock McGregor, Chatham-Kent Councillor and Budget Chair.
Understanding the municipal budget is important for every resident of Chatham-Kent. It affects us all as we move forward into 2021 and beyond. We are growing. Together, we are building our economy. We are expanding fiber internet. There's a housing boom that requires new infrastructure and affordable housing options. And with growth comes the need for better transit services. We need to keep our assets strong, rebuilding and reinforcing bridges, paving roads, repairing erosion issues, and improving our facilities so we can better serve you. These aren't wants, these are needs that aren't going to go away. Our proposed 2021 budget addresses these issues. More than numbers on a page, it's an action plan. I'm excited about what the future holds. We have to plan for the future and take hard steps. It's our duty to ensure Chatham-Kent stays strong now and the next generation.
In 2020, COVID impacted us all, businesses, not-for-profits, and residents. Municipalities across Ontario have been challenged. Even with the significant revenue impacts from COVID in Chatham-Kent, the impact on next year's taxes will be only 0.43%. Everything we buy is affected by inflation. To help cover these costs, Council has pushed for efficiencies across our corporation, resulting in the reduction of 5 full-time staff. Even with inflation, we've only seen an increase of 0.3% to maintain existing municipal services. Municipalities receive a significant portion of funding from the provincial government. When that funding changes, it has a direct impact on your property taxes. The Ontario government has cut funding for childcare, public health, and municipal services. We need to bridge the gaps, which will result in an increase of 0.7%. Apart from just maintaining the status quo, we plan to build a better tomorrow. The draft budget proposes to continue to invest in replacing aging infrastructure, paving more kilometers of road, and replacing large bridges. The climate emergency is further reinforcing the need to increase investment in storm sewer repair and expansion to help reduce flooding. We need to invest in erosion mitigation surrounding Lake Erie and Lake St. Clair, as well as the Thames River and Sydenham River. We need to maintain our facilities, such as pools, arenas, and libraries, to ensure you receive the best service. Overall, maintaining the municipal assets and infrastructure we rely on will result in an increase of 2.1%. As Council, we've heard the community and identified new challenges and opportunities to move forward. In order to expand job and business opportunities, we need better internet and transit. To address housing shortages and homelessness, we need investments in affordable housing and permanent solutions. To build a resilient and sustainable community, we need investment in infrastructure, efficient and effective emergency services, and a real plan for growth. These new directions come at a cost of 0.43%. There are some investments that won't require a tax impact. Through smart saving and planning, the budget proposed we use funds already set aside for things like high-speed fiber internet investments, capital projects, and needed environmental assessments for areas of new growth. Adding it up, there's a total proposed tax impact of 3.96%. That's not the end of the story. A lot of hard work has been done, but now it's up to Council to finalize the budget, to balance investment and cost savings, and to engage with the community to make sure we get it right. Due to pandemic restrictions, instead of in-person town hall meetings this year, you can participate in one of 3 community consultation events taking place on Facebook Live. January 19th at 12 noon, January 20th at 4 p.m., or January 21st at 6 p.m. Budget Committee will begin its virtual deliberations over 3 nights, January 27th at 6, January 28th at 6, and February 2nd at 6. These meetings will also be broadcasted live on Your TV Chatham-Kent, or can be watched through their Facebook page. If more meetings are needed, they will be held on February 3rd and 4th at 6 o'clock. If you want to speak to Council on a particular budget item, send in your thoughts in writing by 3 p.m. each day at ckfps@chatham-kent.ca. Your message will be read to the Budget Committee at the meeting. Thanks for watching, and let us know what you think about budgeting for a better tomorrow.
Hello, and thank you for joining us for our second open house meeting on the proposed 2021 budget Budgeting for a Better Tomorrow. With us today, we have Brock McGregor, Councillor and Budget Committee Chair, Gord Quinton, CFO and General Manager of Finance, Budget, and Information Technology and Transformation, Don Shropshire, Chief Administrative Officer, and to help us answer questions, we have the Executive Management Team, Kathy Hoffman, General Manager of Corporate Services and Chief Human Resource Officer, Thomas Kelly, General Manager of Infrastructure and Engineering, Bruce McAllister, General Manager of Community Development, April Rydek, General Manager of Community Human Services, and Fire Chief Case. For those wishing to learn more about the proposed budget, you can watch the budget presentation from January 13th on the Your TV Facebook page. If you have a question, please enter it in the comments section. For those questions we don't get to, budget employees are online with us to help answer your question. They will be monitoring for a short time after the event. And if you have a question that is beyond our Facebook time, please submit your question or your budget idea using our Let's Talk Chatham-Kent tool. We will now begin with opening comments from Brock McGregor.
Thanks. First, just want to start by welcoming everyone to this budget session. I know it's a little bit unusual compared to what we're used to in the past years with in-person opportunities for feedback, but we're certainly doing our best to adjust to the new realities right now, and hope to be back in person in coming years. I do want to just take a minute to recognize that some other councillors will be online listening to the questions, concerns, and comments that are brought forward. So Councillor Anthony Sakachi is watching today, Councillor Karen Kirkwood-White, Councillor Trevor Thompson, and Councillor Aaron Hall. There might be some others that pop in, but I haven't seen a message from them just yet. So I do want to let everyone know that Council and Budget Committee will be taking the feedback that we receive through this process. And if individuals are unable to be here today to watch, we do have another session tomorrow at 6 p.m. And if there are any questions following that session, people are always welcome to submit those questions and comments via email. And prior to the budget deliberations themselves, you can submit comments that will then be read as deputations to the budget committee. So again, I want to thank everyone for being here, and encourage you to go to the comment section and ask some questions and provide some feedback to us. And I'll pass it over to Gord. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. All right, so our first question is actually one from yesterday. Corey had asked, is there a plan to review the needs of each ward to continue to have their own dedicated municipal office? Could there not be savings by consolidating these offices into a single location, for example, Chatham? We'll start with Gord.
Yeah, thank you. And perhaps Kathy Hoffman, who's the General Manager of Corporate Services, would like to join in on this as well. But yeah, it's an excellent a question, and it's really, a lot of these questions are in the hands of council of what service level they feel that residents demand. And so if you're asking whether it's possible to not have service centers throughout our municipality, yes, it is. For the most part, it would just be offering that service in a different way. And it's and as far as the cost savings, the questions are still coming in, right? They would just come in a different format. So there would be some level of staffing required no matter where that service is being delivered. But I'll put it over to Kathy to answer in more details.
Thank you, Kathy Hoffman, General Manager of Corporate Services. Gord certainly said it well. I think what we want to make sure is that council feels that we're aptly servicing the community, regardless of what community it is that people work in. I will say that through the course of the pandemic, we have been able to, by just virtue of the fact, out of necessity, found other unique ways to be able to provide services to our customers through Chatham-Kent. And so I think that these are things that we absolutely can talk about through the budget process and find out where we can strike that balance between providing in-person services and online services.
Okay. Thank you. The next question I'm going to direct to Gord, and maybe Thomas might be able to help us. Jackie had a question, how are spending on buses? So I'm not exactly sure what her question is asking. But Thomas, I know there's some big changes coming to transit this year. Would you like to provide some information?
Yeah, sure. Thank you for the question. So first of all, our services are twofold. We offer a conventional service and also interurban service, and then on top of that, we have an accessibility service. So last year, Council approved a new service agreement for the next 5 years. Our current contract expires in the end of June of this year. That added about $300,000 to this particular budget. We're also asking for the consideration to Council to continue current pilot projects. And those pilot projects are, first of all, the on-request evening service that's been a high demand from a lot of our local business owners. Second is the midday interurban service run. And the third is a fixed route. And all of those are intended to improve and make it more Chatham-Kent more accessible in the end. So those are 3 pilot projects that are in place right now, and we're asking to extend them further within this budget. That incremental cost in this budget is $183,000. Now, I should note as well, we have offered one cost savings. We typically offer a beach bus service, and our goal is to have at least 25% of the service funded by patrons. That particular service is funded right now under 10%. So it was our recommendation, and through over close to 200 hours of public consultation, that we eliminate that service for savings of about $41,000. So the combination of all of those I just spoke of, that's what's in the budget for transit. Thank you.
Thank you, Thomas. The next question comes from Scott. His question is, why does senior administration refuse to give a full breakdown of the budget, which has been requested for many years? As a taxpayer, we have the right to see every expense. I believe, Don, would you maybe like to begin with this question?
Thanks. Hi, Scott. Thanks for joining us today and for the question. So the information is available and we're happy to share it. So the challenge with posting everything online is the detailed budget is somewhere in the neighborhood of 650 pages, and it's extraordinarily difficult and expensive to actually post that on our website in an accessible format, which we're required to do by the province. It's the law. But if you'd like a copy of that 650-page detailed budget, we're happy to provide an electronic version of that. If you just write into the email address or call me and just make sure that I've got your address, we'll make sure that we send you a disc that's available to any of our citizens. All of the information that Council receives in their budget binder, which is considerably less than 650 pages, but still quite extensive, that has been posted online. And I would refer people that are looking for the budget, in addition to sort of what's being proposed for this year, there's a summary in tab 10 of the budget binder that you can access online. And it not only provides an update on which each directorate is looking to spend on their proposed budget, but it also includes budgets back as far as 2015, every year's budget as a comparison, and that includes staffing levels as well. So I think there's a lot of information there, and for many people that'll be what they're looking for. But if you want that detailed budget, we're very happy to share it. We can't agree with you more. Taxpayers deserve to have all the information that we're presenting. Thank you. Gord, is there anything else you'd like to add, or?
No, and just maybe emphasizing that Council has had opportunities to meet with staff to go through the entire base. This Council has had that opportunity when they were first elected, and then they've approved the changes to the base budget each year as part of the budget process. So Council has access to any information that they would like, and we're responding to their questions this week as they go through this year's budget as well.
Thank you, Gord. I'm going to add Thomas Kelly back. We have a question here that he might be able to help us with. Jaylyn is wanting to know, how are we spending on roads? I'm wondering if that's maybe how much we're spending on roads.
Sure.
Thomas?
Thank you, Jaylyn, for the question. So within our asset management plan, We have looked at all of our assets across CK. It's actually $5 billion in total, of which roads are a significant part. So we've broken that further down into, first of all, paved roads. Last year, we were around 12.7 million in paved roads. We're looking at spending something similar in 2021. Secondly, we have gravel roads, and gravel roads were at 3.9 million. And what's of concern, and I think the basis of the question, is that we receive many complaints about the condition and quality of our roads. So our gravel roads are really very close to being fully funded. It's in the 92% range of what we should have. So council made some great strides over the years to improve that funding. But when it comes down to paved roads, we're only at 52%. So that means that there are 10 roads that should be resurfaced, and we can only do 5. And that's the challenge we have. We've also included in this budget a 1% increase in infrastructure overall, all of our infrastructure. That's that $5 billion in assets that we have. And we spread that out over the entire infrastructure spend. So our total infrastructure spend is very close to $60 million. And we're asking council to take 1% of that. That's what Brock McGregor spoke of earlier, about some of the tax increase. 2.1% was for infrastructure. And we're looking at trying to get to a point, especially with paved roads, where we'd be much closer to be fully funded. Thank you.
Thank you, Thomas. This next question is from Linda. How do we justify a tax hike like this with all the damage to citizens this year?
Thanks. Thanks for the question. And I know that's difficult to understand. So perhaps it's best if I went through where just the overview. It was in Brock's presentation at the beginning of the meeting, but just to reemphasize, we did keep our cost of maintaining our existing services at very close to 0%. It was at 0.30%. But we then had thanks for putting that on the screen. We have our upper level downloads and the Ontario Municipal Partnership funding that resulted in another 0.70. But the rest of it on the screen is where you'll see that it above that 1% of those first two items, it's really focused on improvements to our community. And we do have an aging infrastructure. The BMA study which compares 110 municipalities across Ontario, demonstrated at council this past council meeting, where the age of our infrastructure, both underground and above ground across Chatham-Kent, is older than the average across the province, and we just can't afford to let that slip away from us, because it's only going to get more expensive to fix some of those if you let them totally disintegrate. And it's easier for people to understand perhaps on paved roads, but sometimes it's the things that you can't see underground that are even of more concern and a bigger expense if you don't catch it early enough. So we have investing in our infrastructure, and then the next category being investing in our community, which are things to help people. So for example, whether it's internet and getting fiber throughout the community, or affordable housing, or homeless shelters, it's really expenditures that we feel were necessary to present to council for their consideration. And so we understand the pain that many of our citizens are going through right now. We hope that you're able to access through the federal government through income tax systems and income support systems, the support that is offered for those that perhaps have lost their job through COVID-19. But we felt, as administration, we felt it necessary to bring our infrastructure and investments in our community to council for their consideration. Thanks.
Thank you, Gord. This next question is by Jay Lynn. It's not a budget question, but I know lots of people have been asking this. Dawn, I'll bring you back to the feed. She would like to know, when will that apartment building be done downtown? I'm assuming she means the apartment building in Chatham.
Yeah, I believe it's the Boardwalk Apartment. The expectation is it'll be completely finished and people will be living in it this year. I think for the benefit of the people that are building it, it is 100% funded by a private developer. While it's taken longer than I think a lot of people would have wished for, it's a beautiful building. Both the mayor and I have had an opportunity within the past several weeks to go in and tour the facility. They're doing finishing touches. They were, painting and, installing some of the fixtures and so on. It's absolutely gorgeous space. And while we've had to wait for it, I think it's going to be a really great addition to our downtown core. And I'm looking forward to people living in it and helping support the downtown economy. So thank you for your question.
Thank you, Dawn. I'm going to add Kathy to the stream. Perhaps between yourself, Dawn, and Kathy, you can help answer Corey's question. Due to the impact of COVID-19, many employers have had to make the hard decision to furlough several employees and freeze wages for those remaining. Is Chatham-Kent following the same logic?
Yes, thank you, Corey, for the question. So a couple of things. The way that we have handled furloughing employees is by a couple of means. So first of all, we know that our provincial government has provided requirements throughout the pandemic in terms of what kinds of services could be open and closed. And so always for us, service level drives staffing level. And the very same goes as we move into budget with council. Council will continue to do what it does, which is to review the level of services that we have. And then staffing always follows that. So if we're cutting services, whether they're modified or removed, whatever it may be, then we would be examining staffing levels along with that. While we have been through the pandemic period, I can tell you that we have had we had 47 employees that were laid off during a period of time when we had different services closed. Another 79 of our employees took leaves during that period of time. And we had dozens of employees that were redeployed to various other services within our organization to try to meet them. So we have been constantly examining where our staffing levels are at and what it is that we can do to try to balance where the services are needed and where we can let the level of our employment fluctuate. Your second question related to that was whether or not we were considering wage freezes. Do I have that right, Madam Moderator?
You do?
So the answer to that question, Corey, is that no, it's not our recommendation to have wage freezes. There are a couple of reasons for that. In this last year, while many organizations and companies in the community have suffered certainly extensive economic impact, differently, municipal services have continued on, and in some places in more demand even than they were pre-pandemic and so forth. So again, our what we want to make sure that we're doing is making sure that we are adjusting our pay scales in an appropriate way with really an eye to trying to match up what's happening from a cost of living adjustment. Council has given administration a negotiation authority for those collective agreements that are going to expire this year. And without revealing what that was discussed in and approved in closed session, I would just say that that we are trying to do something that acknowledges that there is an inherent cost of living adjustment that happens through the course of a year, and that's something that we are examining.
If I could add a couple of points, council and administration has been very sensitive to the economic hardship that some people have faced in our community. Earlier in the spring, when less than a month after the onset of COVID, we were in front of council with recommendations as to how we could reduce service levels in some services. Some of our services are not essential, and although they add to the quality of life of our residents, things like our arenas and parks and so on, partly as a result of public health orders, but partly as a result of how we could recommend tax dollar savings, we recommended the reduction in certain service levels, like grass cutting was another example. And as a result of that, we did lay off the 47 people that Kathy talked about. there are a number of other services that the municipality is absolutely mandated to provide. They are considered essential, and a lot of those services require 24/7, 7-day-a-week support. So if you think about things like fire and policing services, our long-term care facility to care for residents that need additional support, all of those services, not only did they have to continue, but they also had to continue in the face of hardship presented by COVID. And so in some cases, we actually had a number of employees transferred over to help in some of those areas, like our long-term care facility, because as a result of the COVID restrictions, we were unable to have family members come in and provide some of the support that they normally do so. So it's been a tough year, but I think we've tried to provide a balance with saying maintain the essential services. We never wanted to have a Chatham-Kent resident, turn on their tap and, have to worry about whether their water was safe to drink or whether we had, safety considerations done on our roadways to have, the snow shovel or plowed and so on. Those things you needed to be able to count on. We provided those services, and I'm very proud of the staff that did so. Where we've been able to make some staffing adjustments, either to shore up those services or to save money, we've also done that. So I think council and administration have been very sensitive to the notice of your question. Thank you.
Thank you, Don. This next question comes from Sue. Is it possible to get an executive summary of all the proposed increases identified in more detail? Gord?
Thanks, Sue, for the question. We provided a link in the chat to the 2021 draft budget overview area that's on our website. And I would encourage everyone to go see that there for all the fine details, every single line of the budget that's going to council for them to review are in tabs 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 of that overview, where we take a look at different areas. And every line item's there for the public to see that it's exact same information that's in the council binder. And I would encourage everyone to see that. Also, in tab 1 of that area is the overview presentation that we provided to council on the opening night, which has lots of information as well. But if you want to see the fine detail, it's all on our website. Thanks.
Thank you, Gord. This next question as well. How is it that Chatham-Kent has the largest budget increase in comparison of other municipalities of equal size and population?
Thank you for the question. So our draft increase of 3.96 is in line with all our comparators across Ontario that are single-tier municipalities that look after the same type of services. So you need to be careful sometimes when comparing perhaps either just lower tier or just upper tier municipalities and not seeing the entire picture. So we take care of a lot of services that most municipalities do not take care of, and whether that's a long-term care home or our employment and social services areas, housing, health units. So most of our community human services area, or whether it's land ambulance or policing, the levels of services vary quite a bit between municipality to municipality, and you have to do that comparison of single-tier municipalities to each other, and they have all pretty well across the board across Ontario are falling in the 3 to 5% draft budgets coming to their councils, and a few of them have been approved to date in roughly the 2.5 to 4.5% ranges. So compare apples to apples, I guess, is the message. And if we only had to look after parks and local roads and fire stations, it would be a lot different price tag that we're looking at. But it's all the other services that municipalities such as Chatham-Kent provides that makes you have to compare it to all other single-tier municipalities.
The next question will be for you as well, Gord. It's from John Paul. And his question is, can the tax hike not be postponed until the pandemic has passed to help those who continue to suffer from the impact of the pandemic?
Yes, thank you for that question. That's really a question of council over the budget deliberation meetings on is there services that they believe that we can stop providing, and you know, it really always goes back to service levels. If I give the example of plowing the snow off the roads, we're mandated to provide that service. There's provincial standards there, and there's our level of services demanded through our local residents and through council. So, so there is that issue of it always comes back to service levels that we provide, and a lot of our costs are also in this budget related to infrastructure. 2.1% of the 3.96 is infrastructure, and it's weighing that moving forward with our asset management plan requirements, but with the costs to residents in this very difficult year in mind, and council has to weigh that and come up with a decision on what appropriate funding decision this year will be.
Thank you, Gord. I believe this next question April might be able to assist us with. Scott's question is, mental health is a critical service throughout Ontario, but particularly in our community. Addiction is a byproduct of mental health issues. Wait times are 6 to 9 months, which is completely unacceptable. What role does the municipality play in mental health resourcing, and why does it seem so underfunded?
First of all, thanks, Scott, for the question. Mental health servicing and programs are really the oversight and responsibility of the Ministry of Health. So from a municipal perspective, certainly we partner and provide whatever we can to a number of the programs and services that are both run and funded by the ministry. So mental health is a significant issue in our community. We acknowledge that. It is getting worse with the pandemic happening. We are seeing certainly a significant increase in both individuals seeking help and assistance at their primary care practitioners, with their public health nurses who are helping them to adjust to a new baby, at our emergency rooms. We are seeing an increase in addiction, an increase in overdoses, an increase in suicide, both here and across the province. So what I can say is that while this is not the municipality doesn't have oversight over the mental health programs and services, we are a partner with the Chatham-Kent Ontario Health Team, and it is certainly one of the issues that as we navigate into our plan for year one with the health team, one of those pillars will be addressing the ongoing mental health of the citizens of Chatham-Kent. Thank you. Lots more to come on mental health and addiction.
Thank you, April. I'll add Don Shropshire back for this next question. Sue would like to know, could some of our services not be provided by the private or not-for-profit sector more cost effectively?
So the quick answer is yes. In fact, we actually do that right now. So maybe I could just paint a bit of a picture. The municipality has a range of different service delivery options. There's some services that we have a mandate to provide directly, and we do provide those services. In fact, the majority of the services that we provide, just by their very nature, they require a subsidy being part of the public sector. I mean, the only services that we really are cost recovery on is the delivery of our utilities, like our water and our electrical company, Integris. We own about 71% of that. All of the other services really are subsidized by taxpayers. So when we're looking at how we split out services and who's going to deliver the services, it's not like there's a lot of people stepping up and saying, we want to run those services, we'll be able to make some money. But let me give you some examples of where we've been creative. We have currently contracted out our waste management services, the people that pick up our garbage and do our waste removal. Those are contracted services. So our ambulance services, our road EMS services are contracted. We also work collaboratively with a number of different organizations to help provide support. So some good examples of that, we had some very heavy levels of involvement from the voluntary sector in responding to COVID. We work closely with United Way and a number of other charities to help provide support to some of our vulnerable populations. So in those situations, we sat down and looked at how we could divvy up the services to sometimes utilize their volunteers to be able to find some cost efficiencies. It's not just with service delivery. Council's also made some good decisions over the years. I'll give you an example of a couple of years ago when the YMCA was doing their capital build. There was a decision by council to invest a little over $2 million, donate it to the Y, and as a result, Chatham-Kent Municipal Council did not have to build a swimming pool in Chatham. So, you know, they're responsible for the owning and the operation of that facility. So I think there is a variety of services. Every year we're continuing to look at how we can drive efficiencies, and whether that's working with members of the private sector, the public sector, or other members of the public sector, we are trying to look for those efficiencies. And in some situations, the municipality is actually the best organization to deliver the service. And then when that's the case, then we continue to do so. But thanks for the question. It's a great one.
Thanks, Don. This next question, maybe Gord can start. Sue would like to know, because COVID has created a crisis in the municipality, would council consider using reserves to offset such a high increase?
Yes, thanks for the question. So just starting off with why are reserves there? And for the most cases, they've been set aside by council or are being accumulated for a specific purpose. So we have for example, in our life cycle area, which is our infrastructure reserves, we have extensive reserves as we save up for major projects. So an example would be in the arena life cycle reserve, we put aside money each year, but then when an entire arena floor needs to be replaced at a cost, you know, pulling off the top of my head at like $1 million floor, that we've already had the money set aside in advance, budgeting for that, so that we can follow our philosophy that council endorsed way back about 10 years ago as a pay-as-you-go philosophy. So we no longer borrow for our life cycle plan for maintaining our existing assets. We put aside reserves ahead of time so that the money's in place for when that major construction project is timed. But then in addition to those life cycle reserves, there are about the other half of our reserves have been put aside for very specific purposes, and many of those we are accessing this year to address one-time items that we are facing. I think the largest example in this year's budget is with COVID. We're having a severe homeless problem, and we are doing a significant drawdown in reserves this year, along with the federal and provincial funding that we are getting to provide a greater level of shelter services over this next coming year. So if we didn't have reserves in the past, we would have had to look to this year's taxpayer to fund that, and the worst time ever during the pandemic, have to ask for that funding. So reserves do come in handy for when they're really needed. And I guess the last thing I'll say before I perhaps I can hand it over to Brock to comment on council's thoughts on it, but it's never advisable to use one-time money from reserves to fund ongoing costs. So anything that's going into the base budget, it never makes sense to fund with reserves because that money will have to be replaced in the next year's budget as well. So if it's a one-time cost, perhaps a reserve is more fitting than raising taxes. And in this draft budget, all the one-time costs have been covered from either reserves or other sources of funding from other levels of government. Brock, perhaps you have some comments.
Yeah, I think Gord, you explained that well, and sort of the way I like to think about it sometimes is that if you had $5,000 in the bank that was saved up to fix the foundation on your house, and you took that out to pay for your gas and hydro bill for the next year. The year after that, you're still going to have to find money to pay for your gas and hydro bill, and then you're going to be short $5,000 to fix the foundation of your house. So it can be, I think sometimes in budget committee, it can seem like an easy answer to look from reserves to offset one-time tax increases. But when that's happened in the past, it's caused a lot of challenges in the following year. So if we actually look at this year, for instance, we've got a portion of this increase is paying for when council's done that in the past. And to look at how long that lasts for, one of those decisions was made in 2014. And we still are recovering some of that funding every year. So I think that while it can be something that offers some short-term gain and makes this year's number look more palatable, it really is a practice that sets us up for some more difficult years ahead. And if we're really interested in seeing that a year-over-year increase go down, we have to look at actual changes to services and changes to ongoing funding rather than trying to play what's a bit of a shell game with reserve funding that really is already there for specific projects and isn't just sort of free money floating around.
Okay. Thank you, Brock. This next question was submitted prior to Facebook Live. How do I find the total dollar amount of the budget? Gord, perhaps you might be able to help us with this one?
Sure. So first, follow the links to our 2021 budget page because that has all the information of our budget. But Amy, I'm wondering, can you just display the one page?
Sure, I can. Just one moment.
We have a sort of a. There we go. So in the green column is the total 2021 proposed budget, and you can see the total at the bottom of the green section is 361 million. Of that, we're looking for through taxpayers to fund the bottom line there of the 168 million, and so roughly half of our budget is funded from taxpayers, with the other half coming from the section at the top where you see federal and provincial grants, user fees, and other charges, and our net contributions either to or from reserves. This year it is a draw from reserves. Knowing that it's a very hard year, that's our net position is a draw from reserves. But overall, it does take $361 million to run a municipality of this size with all the services that we provide here. This chart, I know there's a lot of details and you might not be able to see it, but it is available on our 2021 draft budget overview page.
Thank you, Gord. This next question is from Sue. How is it that those of us that live in so-called tourist or waterfront pay more in taxes than similar houses and property size in Chatham or Wallaceburg?
Yes, thanks for your question. All properties in Ontario are assessed their value by the Municipal Property Assessment Corporation, MPAC. So, and of course, if residents have chance to perhaps appeal that assessment if they think it's wrong, and work with MPAC to get the assessment corrected. So as the corporation of the municipality of Chatham-Kent, we simply charge out the budget requirements of council to all our residents, and property taxes across Canada are based on the value of your property. If you feel your property is overvalued compared to others, it's not the municipality that you go to argue that. You need to take your case up with MPAC on that. I'm not sure if I answered all of the question there, but I just wanted to make that distinction, how your taxes work. I guess maybe I'll go on a little bit about reassessment is a popular topic, especially in the last 5 years. Everyone in Chatham-Kent has experienced perhaps unprecedented increases in the local value of your house through sales, and but the last assessment update that the municipality has received is actually based on 2016 property values. It was supposed to be updated in 2020, but due to COVID-19, the province and MPAC pushed that off an extra year. And so it's likely going to happen in 2021 for 2022 taxations. But at this point, they haven't made that announcement yet. But so I think some people are worried that perhaps they know that house prices in their areas perhaps have gone up 50 or 100% over the last 5 years, and they're worried about their future tax bill. And just to address that, the changes in assessment values have zero impact to the municipality of Chatham-Kent. We do not get $1 more from the value of house prices going up. It's totally revenue neutral to the municipality. So if everyone across Chatham-Kent goes up from $200,000 houses to $250,000 houses, everyone would still have the exact same tax bill, because we're still collecting that same $361 million that I presented on that slide before. Your change is only relative to your neighbors and the rest of the residents in Chatham-Kent. On average, about 50% of the residents might go higher than average, and 50% might have a reduction, right? Just because the average is revenue neutral with no added revenues to the municipality.
Gord, is it safe to say the saying "all boats will rise the same" kind of helps explain it?
That's exactly right.
Okay. All right, this next question, I think Don might be able to assist us with. Deb would like to know, is the proposal by CK to take over policing in Leamington cost neutral? If not, will CK taxpayers be paying for example, the new police cruisers to police Leamington?
So the quick answer is it is not just cost neutral. There'd be a slight benefit to the Chatham-Kent taxpayers. The way the proposal has been submitted, we have not heard back yet whether Leamington wants to accept the proposal. They basically set out a public quote or an RFP to get competitive bids, and our police services submitted a quote to take on policing services, but they ensured that all of the direct costs will be paid for. Where there might be some cost savings or benefit to the taxpayers of Chatham-Kent, we still only need, for example, one police chief. So if we were successful in getting the contract, there'd be a proportional contribution from the Leamington community to pay for a portion of our police chief's salary. But all of those other expenses, the capital costs and so on, were factored in, so that there is no expectation that Chatham-Kent taxpayers would be subsidizing people in Leamington, or the reverse. We're not expecting them to pay as well, but where we could actually share some of the expenses, that would be a benefit to both communities, and that was some of the drivers in actually putting forward a proposal.
Thank you, Don. This next question is from Chris. Can we increase the taxes paid by farms? My home valued pays 5 times the similar value of a farm. Gord?
Brock, did you want to
And then-
comment on that one, and perhaps I can add in any?
Yeah, I can take that one. As we know, when we talk about budget, we're talking about the overall spend of the municipality, and then that's broken out into people's essentially share based on the value of their property. There is a different rate of that share for residential properties, commercial properties, industrial properties, and agricultural properties. So those ratios are within a prescribed range from the province. So the farm tax rate can be between, I believe it's 0.21 and 0.25 of the residential rate. Ours is on the low end. That is not something that's decided through the budget process. It's actually visited following that the budget process. So is it sort of a separate issue? Those ratios are there to be adjusted to soften the blow from big changes in assessed value. So you can imagine if one asset category or one property tax category sees extremely high reassessment growth comparative to one of those other categories, they would take over a larger share of the total tax burden. So that's a bit of a separate debate that happens after the budget process, but is definitely something that needs to be reviewed as we see, in my view, we're likely to see some very, very strong growth in reassessment value in the residential category, and that's going to shift a larger percentage of the total tax burden onto residential payers. It does bring up some other interesting aspects of budget versus what you pay in taxes. So there's other components that make up that total tax bill. And with reassessment, there's also the education portion. And I think it's a good news story that because that education portion has changed, on average, businesses in Chatham-Kent will see about a 5% reduction in what they pay for taxes. So as much as we'll see this, draft number of 4%, and then that will change as council goes through the budget process, there's actually a net reduction in the cost to businesses, which, especially knowing the impact that COVID has had on the business community, that's going to be a net benefit.
Thanks, Brock, and I'll just add on to that and emphasize that that's including that 3.96% increase. Most businesses will see that 5% decrease. Otherwise, I just wanted to add that the farm reassessment item did come forward to council in October and has now been postponed to a March council meeting. So we don't have a firm date yet, but it'll either March 1st or March 22nd. That item about the farm tax ratio will be coming back to council for a debate.
Thanks, Gord. I'm going to add Kathy for this next question. Arlene would like to know, is there training for staff to move and train people for jobs in the municipality, for say people on leave instead of compounding jobs? This way, if people go on holidays, they can rotate on job performance and working for their labor force.
Yes, great question. Thank you for the question, Arlene. The answer is yes. So since the time of the start of pandemic, when we started to see some of our services close, we immediately put in place a really robust redeployment program. We put a fair number of resources around that. And so right away, for example, employees that were being laid off or their services were not as much in demand at that time, we immediately started approaching those staff and offering redeployment options for them, providing them with the requisite training that they would need. I can share with you that even in present day right now, we currently have 37 employees that are redeployed right now, they're in 4 different areas. They're at Riverview Gardens, some are out with our maintenance team. Some have gone to our transfer stations, and some are with our public health team. So we're placing them exactly where we need them. We have also been issuing something that we call expressions of interest. So sometimes when we have different projects inside of the organization that where we are now being able to shift resources, then we're posting those and allowing employees to express if they have a particular interest in another area. And I envision that we will be doing that even more so in this year to come. Thank you for the question.
Thank you, Kathy. This next question is from Crafty. Housing prices and property values have escalated in the past couple of years due to an influx of Toronto residents to our municipality. Consequently, our taxes have been going up as well. How can a senior citizen on a fixed income or a young person making minimum wage hope to afford living in CK?
Thank you for the question. So there's a couple of different ways to slice it. The honest answer is we continue to see costs going up. The municipal staff works with council every year to try and find ways to drive out efficiencies. And as Gord described a few minutes ago, we found a number of those efficiencies where we're close to zero, certainly well less than inflation. So we recognize that we have some of the responsibility to keep our costs lower, and so that it's not as much of a burden on the taxpayer. But I'm not going to pretend that costs will not continue to go up, because they do. Council had a discussion in February of 2020, and we looked at this very issue. And at the end of the day, council does not want to raise taxes more than they absolutely have to, nor do they want to try and reduce service levels. The people, want a quality of life and they want quality services. So, the real magic bullet, if I can say, or the best solution that council choose to support is to try and find a way to grow the municipality, to grow our economy. If we can draw more people to come to Chatham-Kent, if we can increase the amount of activity, economic activity, then there's more people to share the costs, and the overall cost burden will go down for all of our residents or taxpayers. So that's really what we're trying to do. So when Councillor McGregor or members of council talk about investing in our growth or looking at this as a growth budget, we are trying to make significant investments in our infrastructure and other essentials that would allow us to grow our economy and draw more people here. So if we're going to draw more people here, we need to, incent people to build more homes. We need to have road investments and waters and sewers and so on. So that's really where we're trying to go to. It's a long-term strategy, but we believe that's the best one for Chatham-Kent. I know it's small comfort if you're on a fixed income. But it's still a whole lot cheaper to live in Chatham-Kent. And as we've recently found out from our BMA study, our cost of living in Chatham-Kent is one of the lowest in Ontario. And we're going to continue to strive for a high quality of life in an affordable community, but we know that's a struggle right now. So that's the strategy we're using right now. I'm not sure if Councillor McGregor or Gord have anything to add.
Yeah, thanks, Don. And I think that you captured it well. That BMA study provides a lot of data for comparators across communities. And I think that seeing that growth in new residential builds, particularly in apartments as well, speaks to the recognition that there's a need for rental housing, for more affordable housing in our community. And that's something that we're trying to promote through community improvement programs. And definitely something that I know we keep in mind on council, looking at through that lens of affordability. Unfortunately, some of those things are outside of our control when you look at direct housing costs. That's supply and demand and dictated by the market. And while we have seen really strong growth here, there's been strong growth in Windsor and London and throughout the province. And we do remain more affordable than most areas, which is an advantage, and frankly why we're seeing that influx of people from other areas.
This next question, Bernice, I pay twice the amount of taxes in my community compared to some in Thamesville. I have no street lights, no stores, no sidewalks. So how is that fair?
Yeah, thanks for the question. So again, if it's comparing one residential property to another residential property, it all comes down to the sale prices in the area and the value that's placed on that home through the Municipal Property Assessment Corporation. Our rates do vary a little bit community to community, because there might be some services that are only area rated to some communities. So for example, if you were comparing a Chatham property to a Thamesville property, the Chatham property would also have in its rate the urban busing system that's in Chatham. So there's a small difference in rates from town to town and out into the rural area. It does depend on where you live on exactly what your rate is. But overall, the biggest driver of a change in what somebody pays from one property to another of comparable properties, it's on the the sale prices that are happening in that area and that have resulted in the MPAC assessment values.
Thank you, Gord. This question, I think perhaps Don or Bruce might be able to assist us with. John would like to know, has there been an increase in economic activity in Chatham-Kent? Bruce, would you like to start? And
Sure.
maybe if John has something else?
Definitely, we've seen an increase in economic activity in Chatham-Kent. First and foremost, obviously, Councillor McGregor just spoke about the increase in residential activity, in new starts. We're finalizing, going through the 2020 stats with regard to our building permit data, but I can tell you right now, over the 10-year period from the last recession, 2009 through to 2018, we averaged about 114 new residential homes in all of Chatham-Kent on a yearly average. In 2019, that rose significantly up to about 215. And this year we're upwards of 275 permits. Now, a permit is issued for one dwelling unit. So included in this year's stats, obviously, we have that one new apartment going on Park Ave. So that's the equivalent of permit, but 120 new dwelling units to the community. In years past, we hadn't seen any of that type of activity. So anecdotally, I'm going to suggest that on the industrial side of things, our building permit values are up to some extent over the past few years. It was a bit skewed for a number of years with the wind turbine activity, but so the short answer is yes, we are seeing certainly increases on construction activity for sure. And I can tell you our planning and building departments are busier than they have been in years in terms of volume of applications for both planning and development proposals and building permits.
If I could add maybe a couple of comments about the past year. As we've heard from a number of the questions people have posed today, there was a group of our community that have been really hard hit financially or economically as a result of COVID, and we recognize that. And kudos to the senior levels of government who often have the primary mandate to come and support some of those folks. There have been a number of programs that have been launched by both the federal and the provincial government to provide support to people that have either lost their jobs or income or have extraordinary expenses. So things like subsidies for everything from property tax to electrical bills have been introduced to try and provide some relief. It's not everything, but they have tried to step up. I think the other piece is that there have been parts of our economy that have actually had a very busy year and very successful year, where people have not been able to travel or do some things that they normally do. They've invested in their homes, or they've invested in different projects and so on. So we've had some parts of our economy that have done very well, and we're expecting that when COVID starts to be in a better place, or we're in a position where we can get back to more of our regular activities, there's going to be a pent-up demand for people to go out and actually do other things that they've not been able to do for the last year. And some parts of our economy are going to be well positioned to do that. So I think, trying to maintain that balance and do what a municipality can do to help support people that are in need, but also to recognize that we're trying to make sure that our businesses have support. And for those that are on the line that have private businesses, our economic development staff are standing ready to provide advice and support, or provide information about how you can get additional support from senior levels of government in addition to the municipality. So we'll try and provide help where it's needed, but there are some things that have actually been positive over the last year.
Thanks, Don. We're now nearing the end of their time allotted. And so I have a question submitted by Carol, and I left hers to the end because I think it's a nice way of wrapping up today's session. Carol would like to know, how is the tax hike going to benefit the homeowners? Gord?
Yeah, perhaps I can start off, and then anybody else that wants to add in. So municipalities is the level of government that touches a homeowner in their day-to-day activity more than any other level of government. It's the road in front of your house. It's maintaining all the hard services throughout the municipality. It's the arena that your kids play hockey in. It's your library that you visit. It's the social services that you may need. And, costs do go up year to year. With inflation, we have found many efficiencies in this budget that are in the details that are that you can review. But as services go up, and particularly the need to maintain all our lifecycle infrastructure services, we feel it's the right thing to do to bring the draft budget to council at the level as it was at the 3.96% draft budget, because we can't be recommending to let our infrastructure crumble and get more aged than it already is. And there is a demand for a new level of services that a resident of Chatham-Kent might benefit from as well. So it is going into council's hands, and as representatives of the citizens of Chatham-Kent, it will be in their hands to decide whether to accept our recommendations or whether to make adjustments. Brock, perhaps you have other comments?
Gord, maybe if I may, if I bring up your slide for the summary, am I safe in saying that over 2.5% would directly affect those in our community this year with improving our infrastructure and also investing in our community by providing better rural internet, improving transit, increasing affordable housing, and help for the homeless?
Yeah, that's exactly why we summarized it into these sort of different buckets this year. Yes, on the top two sections are things that we had to look after. That put us 1% in already to start, but it's the 2.1% investing in infrastructure, and it's just something that you can't put off if you don't add inflation, particularly in the infrastructure area. 2021, perhaps on a CPI rate, is a low inflation year at under 1%, but the inflation on infrastructure is still rising at a 3, 4, 5% level, and we just get farther and farther behind if we don't maintain that. And perhaps I can put part of the problem of property taxes across Canada and Ontario for sure is all the local roads and infrastructure and our arterial roads in Chatham-Kent. It's all on local property taxpayers to pay. We do get a little bit of federal gas tax, but in the grand scheme of things, it's a drop in the bucket compared to what our costs are. And that is different than in some provinces. If you go out west, many of the provinces will contribute up to 50% of that cost. That does not happen in Ontario. And it doesn't stop. Those costs keep on continuing to go up, and the age of our infrastructure continues to age. And I don't see that going away unless the federal and provincial governments were to perhaps modify the property tax system and give us a new source of revenues. We are pushing, as is the Federation of Canadian Municipalities and Municipal Finance Officers of Ontario and other groups, to get a share of the HST, because we really feel that the municipal property tax system is a little bit broken, and we need that adjustment to get a little bit of sales tax coming in directly for infrastructure.
Thanks, Gord. Don has a comment, and then we will go over to Brock for final closing.
Thank you. Several times today we've talked about infrastructure. I just saw a notice from Carson about it being a relatively small component. I just want to put it in perspective. The municipality owns approximately $4 billion worth of physical assets or infrastructure. And that looks like our roads and our buildings and our sewer and systems and water plants and so on. So it is a very large amount of money. The amount of money that we should be investing every single year to maintain the existing infrastructure is on the order of $90 to $95 million. The amount we're actually investing in Chatham-Kent is closer to $55 million. So every year we've got a gap. We've in effect, we're shortchanging ourselves. So we are playing catch up with some of the investments we're making, but it is a very significant amount. Even with the amount we're currently investing at $55 million, that's the cost of, maintaining our roads and not only fixing potholes, but, sidewalks and all of the other pieces of that $4 billion asset. So it is a significant amount. And I don't think it's just in terms of a project that you go out and you repave a road. It's also, the time and energy and the cost of maintaining staffing levels to maintain those assets as well. So I think the reason we're trying to maintain that is they all contribute to a quality of life for Chatham-Kent, and they all are essential infrastructure that also supports not only our residents, but our businesses as well. So I think it's significant, and council has taken that long-term strategy of how we balance those needs for their overall benefits and sustainability of our community. So thanks for the questions. I'll turn it over to Councillor McGregor.
Thanks, Don. And maybe just to follow up on some of those comments, if Carson, if you got on a little bit later there too, the net impact this year for commercial properties, even at the proposed 4% municipal increase, would be a tax decrease of about 5% for commercial properties. So I think that's important to know when we talk about trying to lessen that impact from this year. But again, in closing, just want to thank everyone for attending virtually today, and remind you that tomorrow we have our last virtual open house, and that's at 6 o'clock. So you can submit questions prior to that. If there was any questions that we didn't make it to today that were submitted towards the end, we'll get to those as well tomorrow. If you have any other questions or comments, you can provide those via email. If you'd like to make a deputation to the budget committee, you can submit those via email, and they're read to the budget committee. Did also want to just mention that Councillor Latimer did get on to the feed a little bit later, so she was watching it and taking that feedback as well. So again, I want to thank staff for answering the questions today, for everyone for being engaged, and looking forward to receiving more of this important feedback that council will use to finalize this budget in the coming weeks. Thank you.